Welcome back, everybody. In our last video, we took a look at something called enharmonic notes. And enharmonic notes are basically notes that we consider to be equivalent notes. And once again, we're really talking about music theory for the absolute beginner. So I hope nobody goes ahead and posts bad comments going, oh, wait a minute, you know, they're not exactly the same. Or I understand that. I know that they're not equivalent for upper levels of music theory. But for the beginner, this definition is definitely sufficient. Okay, so we understood that A sharp is equivalent to a B flat. C sharp is equivalent to D flat. Can you guess the remaining ones? D sharp is equivalent to, hopefully you said E flat. F sharp is equivalent to G flat. And finally, G sharp is going to be equivalent to A flat. Once again, just for the beginner for now. All right, let's move on and let's actually point out a few other ones that might be a little bit less obvious. For example, B sharp. And what is B sharp equivalent to? Well, B sharp is equivalent to C. And let's look at one more, or actually a couple more, E sharp, and we're going to say that E sharp is equivalent to F. Let's look at some more equivalencies here. And what if I had said something like C flat? C flat. And I'll go ahead and move on and just say F flat, and so that these two, so C flat is going to be equivalent to B, and F flat is equivalent to E. Okay, now I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, well, wait a minute, you said in an earlier video that there is no such thing as a B sharp, an E sharp, a C flat, or an F flat. Those were your exact terms. There's no such thing as a B sharp, an E sharp, C flat, or F flat. And I'm not contradicting myself, but I am simply adding an addendum here that this is really how we treat music theory at the lower levels. We say that B sharp and E sharp doesn't exist. We say that C flat and F flat do not exist. And hopefully you can see the reason why. It's so much easier to understand things in terms of just a plain old note of C or F or B or E. Gosh, those seem a whole lot easier to understand than having to deal with things like B sharp and E sharp and C flat and F flat, which sound significantly more complicated. But later on they will exist for us. Okay, so now we have an idea about enharmonic notes. We understand things that are equivalent, and so we just really want to maybe keep that idea about enharmonic notes. Another word is maybe equivalent, and so that would be like our equivalent non-music term. So equivalent and enharmonic are essentially equivalent terms. And so now we have an idea about what notes are equivalent and which ones are not equivalent. Now we want to go ahead and move a little bit further, and a lot of students I think really have trouble memorizing the chromatic scale. And so let's kind of think of it like this. Let's see, let's go ahead and just write out our chromatic scale here, and we're going to just do this simply in sharps. C, C sharp, writing this all the way out, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and all the way through, coming back around to A. The thing that's going to be very helpful for you to understand is two things. One is you want to absolutely 100% memorize, and so let's write this out. Let's go ahead and memorize the chromatic scale in one system or the other. So I would suggest memorizing it in sharps. Most of my students tend to feel really easy, find that it's a lot easier to memorize it in sharps. So memorize it. Memorize the chromatic scale, memorize it in one system. Memorize it in one particular system. So if you struggle with memorizing it, this is a little tip or a trick that's going to help you. Memorize it in one system only. Really understand. And then the next thing is understand how to convert. Understand how to convert. How to convert. All right, so what are we converting? Well, how do we convert from sharps to flats? How do I, if somebody gives me the note, if somebody gives me the note G flat, how do I convert that to something that makes sense to me? And what I really want to do to be able to convert is understand the function of what a flat is. And if you recall from an earlier video, the function of a flat is to reduce or lower, basically lowers a note by a half step. So I want to understand that, oh, a G flat is taking a G note and it's going down. So I'm taking a G note and I'm going down. So the function of a flat is to go down. So then I would think to myself, well, what is down from G in the sharps? And it turns out that that would be None other than F sharp. So G flat and F sharp would be the same. And let's do another example like this. And so sometimes, let's say somebody might say to you, oh goodness, you know, this particular song, oh, it's got a B flat. And you might be racking your brain and going, oh, what is a B flat? I am so lost. I'm so confused. But then you remember, I know the chromatic scale in sharps, and I know how to convert. And how do I convert? Well, it's very simple. I understand that flats go down by a half step. That is their function. So what did it come down from? Well, it came down from a B. So B goes down to B flat, and then I would think, well, what's before a B in the terms of sharps? And it turns out that that would be an A sharp. And that's just maybe another way to think about it, another way of thinking about it for beginners who are having a hard time understanding this sharps and flats business. Now, one last little piece of tip that I can give you is no one is going to talk to you in specifically sharps or specifically flats. You absolutely need to learn how to convert from one to the other. It's best if you memorize both. If you can memorize your sharps and memorize your flats, absolutely that's the best thing. If you struggle with doing that, then you need to go ahead and learn how to do this little system, which is you need to memorize in one system, preferably I would say sharps, and then you need to understand how do I convert a sharp to a flat, and you need to memorize that little idea that a flat is reducing a note by a half step.